policies. And I think she did a very thorough, good job of this. And I think it's good that you see it. And so Matt is going to patch that in before we get going here with the regular meeting. It lasts about 13 minutes, but I think that will also give our folks from THW a little more time to get prepared there.
No problem. Hang on one second.
Julie Johnson is on.
And we will still have the regular presentation from THW subsequent to the video if the internet and everything cooperates with us.
Can everybody see an image of Taryn?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and play. This will be about 13 minutes, and then we'll resume right after this is over.
Probably is helpful if everybody puts their audio on mute.
Hi, independent living residents. This is Taryn. If you don't know me, I'm the Director of Clinical Services for Independent Living, and I'm also the Facility Infection Preventionist. This video, I hope will be brief. The purpose is to discuss a recent change to our campus policy related to COVID-19 mitigation. Effective this Monday, October 26th, independent living residents are now permitted to invite visitors to campus. I want to quickly talk about this significant change to our campus policy to discuss our intention related to the policy change, the rationale behind the decision, and also our expectations for residents regarding implementation of this changed policy. To start, I want to let you know that all decisions related to the COVID-19 response on Deerfield's campus are not made by one person and are in no way unilateral. So all decisions related to our policy are made by a group of people, an interdisciplinary team. This consists of members of the COVID-19 task force, senior leadership at Deerfield, and always consultation with the Buncombe County Health Department and on occasion the state liaison as well. When it comes to this change, now allowing independent living residents to have visits by family and loved ones on campus, I want to focus first on the intention. This is not meant to be a free-for-all. This is meant to allow residents who have gone 6 or 7 months without being able to see the people that they love the most to have the opportunity to have occasional, thoughtful, responsible visits from 1 or 2 people who are critical to maintaining or promoting that resident's health and wellness. So, examples of a reason not to invite visitors to campus would be, just to hang out or to have a party among friends. The intention is really to allow someone who truly needs a visit to have one. So this might be a person, a resident who has recently received a difficult medical diagnosis and who would very much benefit from the opportunity to have a visit from someone who loves them that they can converse with. It may be a resident who has heard about the illness or the passing of a loved one who could use some support. So the intention, again, is really that residents use this opportunity for very thoughtful and conscientious and necessary visitation. Our hope is that most residents won't participate in visitation at this time. Indeed, no visitation during the COVID era is safe. There are ways to make it safer, and we will promote those things. But all adults age 65 and over and anyone with comorbid medical conditions still should be continuing to take all of the opportunities that they can to protect themselves from exposure to this virus. And that means staying at home and practicing the 3 W's. And we'll get back to that in a minute. I do want to shift to talk about why we've made this change now. I know that many residents are concerned. Of course, there's a subset of residents that are thrilled by this change and opportunity, but many are worried. They're particularly concerned because of trends that we're seeing concurrently with this policy change in the United States. I want for residents to know that those of us who are involved in this decision making are cognizant of the fact that cases in the United States are on the rise. We are aware that we are headed towards a third peak that may very well be significantly more intense than the first two. We're also aware that we're moving into the colder fall and winter seasons, which bring with them some unique and challenges related to COVID-19 that are different from what we've faced thus far. So we know that cases are rising in the United States. We also understand that we're seeing an increase in cases and transmission activity, both in North Carolina on the state level and also to an extent in Buncombe County on the county level. And so with that awareness, I want to share with you the reasons that we made this decision now. One is that the state of North Carolina, under Governor Cooper's leadership, have recently moved our state into phase 3 of the relaxation of restrictions. Phase 3 has always been a benchmark for allowing independent living residents to have this opportunity for very cautious visitation. Phase 3 is about recognizing that the risk of coronavirus has not necessarily decreased. If anything, it may be increasing at this time, but also recognizing that we have been living with this virus now for many months, and we do have tools at our disposal to prevent its transmission. We've also had plenty of time over the course of this pandemic to learn how to practice those mitigation measures effectively and to allow them to become part of our habit rather than something that's totally new and unusual. So the state's move into phase 3 is one reason why this change has come now. Another reason is that in late September, the federal government, then endorsed by our state, moved to not just recommend, but require in-person visitation indoors in nursing homes, as long as a facility is 14 days away from their last identified case. So what that means is, at Deerfield, we'll take Deerfield as the example. Once it has been 14 days since our last identified case, and we have an opportunity to get systems in place, we have an obligation to offer in-person visitation in our health center. It is discrepant to allow individuals to visit in person in the health center and then to at the same time have a complete lockdown of independent living. Those things are divergent in a way that did not feel good. Of course, in the nursing home, there are extra measures in place to ensure compliance, right? There's some oversight. And so we recognize that caveat as well. But we also trust that independent living residents know how to mitigate this virus, that they have the tools, and that they will be cautious and conscientious. The last reason why we've chosen to implement this now is that every other CCRC in the area has already done so, and in fact has been open to independent living visitation for weeks or more without negative consequence. And so that precedent also encouraged our move to very cautiously, we hope, allow some independent living resident visitation. Now I want to talk about our expectations for resident behavior related to this change. I've mentioned to you the intention of this policy. I hope that all residents will take that intention to heart. We ask that residents who do invite visitors, who feel that a visitor is necessary to their health and well-being, that they do so sporadically and occasionally, that visitors come during set hours. The hours that we set are 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Those are times when we have someone available at the guard station to ensure that the visitor is checked in appropriately. And those hours also are designated to discourage overnight stays, which are not permitted. So I do think it's important for residents to understand that we do have visitation hours and visitors are not permitted to spend the night. When visitors are invited, we ask that residents limit them to 1 to 2 persons. So that may be 2 adults visiting, or it may be 1 adult and 1 child. Children visiting campus should be supervised by an adult, particularly in the COVID era. We ask that visitors go directly to their destination. So residents may meet their visitor in a lobby or outdoors and escort them directly to the site of visitation. Whenever possible, outdoor visits are safer than indoor visits because in the outdoors we have obviously greater ventilation and a larger, less confined space for any viral particles that escape your mask to disperse. So prioritize outdoor visitation whenever you're able. If not, indoor visitation is permissible. You may consider opening your windows to increase ventilation. And again, we do want for visitors to be considered guests of that resident to go directly to the site of the visitation, not to linger in hallways and not to visit with other residents. The goal here is that the resident who invites the visitor is the person who incurs the risk from that visit. We want to do everything possible to mitigate that visitor's contact with other residents. In addition, and in many ways most importantly, it is critical that everyone understand that masks are mandatory on this campus. Visitors are required to wear masks. Visitors should wear their masks not only in transit, but also when they reach their destination, even if that destination is your residence or a residence. So even behind closed doors in an apartment or a cottage, visitors need to wear masks and they need to maintain social distancing, a distance of 6 feet or greater from the residents that they are visiting. That following these rules, while they are burdensome and uncomfortable and unfortunate and unpleasant, following these rules is how we are allowed to have some interaction with others that is relatively safe and does not put not only ourselves but also our entire community at significantly increased risk. So please, please adhere to those guidelines. With everything with COVID-19, we do have tools that work, and those tools are wearing masks, maintaining social distancing, and keeping our hands washed and away from our face to the greatest extent possible. Lastly, I want residents to know that we are monitoring this situation closely. We recognize that there is risk in allowing independent living resident visitation. We believe that residents will honor this change, will recognize their personal duty to protect not only themselves but also others. And we believe that it is very possible for this to move forward with very little risk to the general community. That being said, each day we are collecting data on the number of visitors who are coming on campus and the residents whom they are visiting. I will be reviewing that on a daily basis, looking for trends. We also will be relying on resident feedback and observations from staff, and really consistent review of state and local data related to key COVID-19 metrics. So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for sharing your concerns with myself and others. And please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions related to this new policy. Again, it's all about the 3 W's. This is how we move forward with our lives while remaining as safe as possible until we have the opportunity for a vaccine, which will really ultimately turn this pandemic around. Meanwhile, it's the 3 W's. Wear your face mask at all times. Stay distant from each other, and wash your hands. Thank you.
Okay, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, that was very good. Who
We are sending that link to
trying to see that?
all the residents, and we do feel it's important that everybody see this. We would have done this, and we had hopes to do this at our meeting last week, but the meeting just went longer. We had a lot of information to give out, so we think in this format it actually may be good that each individual be able to view that at their convenience. So I do appreciate you being with us this morning. I hope that the power stays on between here and Atlanta and the internet works for us and all that. But we did want to have an opportunity through our repositioning and the evolution of our expansion process and design process for y'all to be engaged, for you to hear the progress, for you to have the ability to have input. So we specifically have invited 3 groups to this meeting. It's the Buildings Committee, the Grounds Committee, and the Resident Council. So I want you to focus this morning really on one thing, and we're looking at land planning and site work. I know it's easy to get caught up in a lot of other things, but that is really the intention of this meeting and kind of the phase that our development team is in, to look at the site works, how the buildings work and play together with each other for you. It's really, whenever I probably need to say it more often. This is all about the use of this community for the residents, how it looks, how it feels, how it plays off of each other. And we've got with us this morning Jim Hudgens and Jake Friend from THW. They have both been involved with Deerfield and the design elements for a long, long time. THW, their firm is over 60 years old. And their one thing that they focus on primarily is senior living. They have served Deerfield well over the years. One of the things that I think has worked extremely well for us in their planning and helping us was the connectivity that we have between our buildings. And we don't take that for granted, because on a site where you've got 100-foot change in elevation, it can be very complex. And that has worked so well for us. And our wait list has indicated over and over again that they like the concept of connectivity. So part of what we're looking at today is, okay, do we continue to connect buildings together? And obviously at some point you complete a loop, if you will. And so I'm going to turn it over to Jim Hudgens. Jim is a principal with THW, and then he'll turn it over to Jake for our presentation. I'm going to let them guide y'all on how they want to entertain questions, whether they do it later or whether they want it during the presentation. So Jim, are you still on?
I am. Thank you, Bob. Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you again. I apologize for the compromised connectivity with a few of us here this morning. We've had a little bit of rough weather last night, and that's why I have my video turned off, just so I can maintain at least an audio connectivity. However, lucky for us, Jake managed to get into the office this morning, and I believe is all set up for the presentation. And we're anxious to share with you some of the things that we've been doing since the last time we connected, which I believe we had most of the residents together to review the concept about a year ago. And I know we've touched on a few of these issues a couple of times since then, but our team has been hard at work trying to do a number of things, one of which is take a hard look at the site development, take a look at a number of different options that have been available to us, evaluating them on all kinds of criteria, mostly with respect to what the real value is to the residents, and also what the most economic choices that we can make are. And so we've tried to marry those two together, and Jake will walk you through some of the issues that we've been dealing with. But I think we've got some really exciting concepts to share with you. And we are still at a very early stage in this process. So we've got, some latitude to make some decisions, to redirect a few things if we need to. And of course, we'll be doing a little bit of that just as we go through the natural part of the schematic design process and we start to discover more information. We're still going through a lot of site due diligence information and taking a look at topographic issues and earthwork issues and tree save issues and all the things that I'm sure are concerning to you. So I'll end here, and I'll introduce Jake Friend. He is our Director of Land Planning, who's been with us for over 30 years, and as Bob said, has been active on the Deerfield campus for probably over 25 years now. So I know this campus is very near and dear to his heart, and he's doing his best to be as diligent as possible in terms of reviewing the options that we're going to be taking a look at. So, Jake, I'm going to turn it over to you, and hopefully you can share your screen and make sure everybody can see the presentation.
Well, thank you, Jim. I appreciate that. And I'm really happy to be here today to share with you some early concepting and planning that we've looked at for the project. And I want to make sure that I'm sharing the right screen with you. I'm not really up to speed on Zoom, but I want to make sure that
Jake, it looks good, this map.
so are you seeing my red pointer?
Yes, sir. We see the site concept review slide and your red pointer.
Okay, well, terrific. And let me make sure that I can advance forward and back here. Let's see. I'm gonna look here real quick. It seems like I'm not advancing, so let me go back to my.
If your up down arrow doesn't work, you might try your left right arrow. Sometimes that'll do it.
Okay. It's, what I'm sharing is I'm going to stop sharing here, get back to my slideshow. Are you seeing?
So we're not seeing your screen anymore. I think you want to reshare. I found that when you want to advance a slide, sometimes you have to click on that page to get it to advance.
Okay. Share screen.
And you're currently in gallery view.
Oh, you can see that. Okay.
I don't think you're sharing currently. There you go. Okay. So we see your screen, and I think if you just go up and do a slideshow, start from beginning at the top, then I think it'll start the presentation.
Okay. I'm going to put this in presentation mode here. I was hoping to get it into.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now is not the presentation. We're seeing the PowerPoint, the non-display version of PowerPoint.
Okay, let me.
My experience is the presentation mode of PowerPoint does not work in Zoom.
It does. It's just a little tricky to get that one selected.
Okay, so let me, I've got everything down. So let me I'm going to share my screen, go back to here. The only thing that's.
If it's possible to send the file to me, I could share it. I don't have your latest file, I don't think.
So are you seeing the presentation now?
Right now, we're not. You're not sharing. We're just seeing the normal Zoom screen.
Because it shows I'm sharing here. So
Matt, I'll send you a link. Just one
Okay.
second.
Yep.
and I have I want to make sure you get the right show because we worked on it.
Sorry for the delay, folks. We'll get this figured out.
Jake, you're in gallery view.
Yeah, it's so weird because
So while they're working on this, Jim,
There we go. There we go.
Well, I think
Jim, tell us, per my recollection, y'all worked for a long period of time for on a project over, wasn't it in China or Japan?
China.
China.
Actually, we had, yeah, Jake's very familiar with China. Jake was our liaison, if you will, for quite some number of years, doing a number of very large scale projects. I mean, you can imagine, the Chinese are dealing with the same aging issues that the United States is dealing with, except that you have to multiply the numbers by about 1,000.
So give us an idea of the scope of the project you did over there.
In the United States, you typically talk about hundreds of residents on a typical senior living campus, realizing that there are a lot of them that are much smaller than that. But, Deerfield is perhaps maybe one of the larger campuses that we deal with on a regular basis. If you took Deerfield and multiplied it, times 5, that's probably a sort of a typical senior living campus in China. Now, they don't have quite as many as the United States does, but they tend to deal in a much larger scale than the US does. Everything is in a high-rise format for the most part. So we're talking about 5 to 6 times the size of a typical Deerfield campus.
Right.
And their traditions are very different. Chinese think very much about certain environmental conditions. Buildings, for the most part, tend to face in the same direction. That's just part of their kind of religious philosophy and so forth. So there's, even though the aging and place issues are very different, it's quite different in scale and quite different in philosophy.
Thanks.
How you doing, Jake?
got Kimberly with me here.
I have the slides from Brian, so I think I can share. Give me just 1 second.
Share screen.
So is that what you want to share?
Yeah, but when I try to toggle it, I can't. I'm just trying to share the whole presentation.
This should be shared.
Okay, and then when I try to advance the slides, it won't advance. So
Go now.
There you
so
go.
you all.
Yep,
Okay.
that looks good.
Looks good.
All right, I think we got it.
Okay.
Thank
I
you,
just
Kimberly.
needed.
No problem.
Well, thank you. I apologize for that. There's an advanced technology experience there that I'm not capable of. I found out. Let me move into this. This is kind of the overall campus map. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the overall site. Today, we're not going to focus in on the healthcare side of it. We're going to really spend more time on this lower portion of the property. And in a later presentation, we'll get up into the healthcare expansion. So we're down in this portion of the site, and we got Henry Hall and Tootin and the grounds building. So that kind of gives you an orientation of where we are on the site. And this is the Racket Club Road that's coming through the bottom of the property. And we're going to focus right in on this location here on the property. So to give you a high level overview of the property, this was the conceptual master plan early on when we started to lay this out, and we're looking at, first phase, the independent living building, the assisted living and commons area here, and not this building, and 2 of the hybrids. But in our planning and our design, what we want to do is look out as much as we can long range, because the city's going to be asking us the questions, how are you planning this out and how are you going to be working on the property? And though this may change and it may vary a little bit, we want to at least go in with an overall understanding of how the community might expand over the years and how that might look. So that takes into a lot of consideration some of the things that we've been hearing from you as a group and from Deerfield, some of the considerations and goals. And we didn't put these in any specific order, but we did want to spend some time with you. And I'll try not to get way into the weeds here, but I don't want to confuse you. So high level tree save is really important to us. And if you noticed in the first phase of the project and the community and the planning, we really worked hard in the placement of the architecture and the planning to make sure that we saved as many of the trees as we could on the property. And, that's always a challenge as we start placing in the infrastructure, the roadways, setting the building in, making our connections so that you can navigate the site. We want to make sure that that's doable. And we also are looking long range of that also. We want to enhance the resident lifestyle and the amenities. So there's going to be a lot of focus on what are you currently looking at out of your apartment buildings? What are you looking at through the community from a lifestyle, from walking and pathways and amenities? We want to preserve the existing hydrology patterns on the site. So we have a full survey of the entire property, all the topography and all the trees and all the sizes of the trees. When that'll allow us to really study the hydrology patterns, which is critical to the tree save, and how that the site, how we contain the water and how we use and protect the site. And that leads us into erosion control. So we're going to spend a lot of effort trying to make sure that we focus in on erosion control. We don't want a lot of sediment going into our neighbors. And we don't want a lot of sediment going down and under the tree canopy or within the fabric of the community. Stormwater management, kind of touched on that a little bit, but we want to utilize that as amenity as we can, as much as we can. So as we start to impact the property, we want to make sure that we are taking advantage of that stormwater, and we use that as an amenity for us so that we don't take down more trees within the community. So further downhill as we go, we want to minimize the amount of water we're storing downhill, but we want to use it up, try to hold it as far upstream of that. We do want to try to use sustainable design principles, and that kind of leads into the LEED principles. Though this may not be a certified LEED project, THW has always looked at the sustainable side of the LEED principles, the off-gassing and the UV light and what we're dealing with as far as formaldehydes and even how we are buying and resourcing the materials. We're using local materials and stuff like that. So we're really going to spend a lot of time on that and make sure that we're making the healthiest community that we can make, and the choices and the fabrics and the materials that we use in the community. The phasing, the development, that's critical. So as we start to look at that, what are the future impacts on the existing community? We want to make sure that as we're starting to look at those phasing and development impacts, that we minimize how it impacts your lives on a daily basis. Construction access and staging, that has a lot to do with how the roadway systems are put into place, how we're accessing the site through the community, or are we putting in a temporary construction road, or are we driving through the existing community? So we're going to try to minimize that and make sure that we're not driving through the community as much as possible. Utility infrastructure and phasing, that has a lot to do with, as we're putting in utilities, we don't want to tear out anything that we've put in the next phase. So we're going to pay attention and really try to plan that out as much as we can and make sure that we're not putting anything that we would actually tear out in a later phase. The earthwork, we spent a lot of time on that earthwork cut and fill balance, and the burden to the site if we haul it in, haul it off, and what that cost is, not only in tree loss, but also in the amount of cost to the project. We want to make sure that we keep that as low as possible. So a balanced site is really ideal. Parking impacts, we spent a lot of time on that. We're really going to focus in on that. Pedestrian connectivity, accessibility. We're going to make sure that we can give you full access to the site. We're going to try to make all the sidewalks that we're putting through the community at 5% or less. There'll be areas that it'll be a challenge and we'll have to go to shorter extents of 8%, but the majority that we're going to really try to make sure that we're at 5%. Replanting, as we start to look at the tree loss and taking down material, we're going to want to put back in kind the same types of materials that were taken out or the trees that were taken out. So we're going to focus a lot of time on native species and vegetation and that replacement value. So if we're taking out trees, we want to put back in kind what we took down as much as we can. Activity spaces, we're going to spend more time on this, but as we go into the planning, we're only in SDs right now, or schematic design. We're coming out of concept planning, but we're going to talk about dog parks and garden areas and outdoor fitness spaces, whether that involves pickleball or bocce ball or other activities that you all want to see on your community. We're going to make sure we spend some time to talk to you about that. So the tree cut and fill balance, or the cut and fill balance of the site, we spent a lot of time. We went through multiple iterations on that, studying that, working with the contractor and the team and the civil engineer, and talking about how we could minimize, and we started looking at how we would adjust the grades to protect that. Those options really came out. We started looking at, well, to save trees, do we stockpile the excess dirt on site? Well, that means that we have this huge, massive pile of earth because we have about 40,000 cubic yards of earth that we need to place after the first phase. It makes sense to go ahead, and if we have the future platform, to go ahead and place it, but we wanted to make sure we studied that and see if there were any options for that. We wanted to look at whether we could haul off the earth, and then we bring it back in the future when we need it. Well, when you haul it off, it costs you, millions of dollars, and when you bring it back, you're paying even more to buy the dirt 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road to bring it back into the site. So there's extremely high cost burden to that. And then we started looking at, well, where do we place the hybrids? Do we place it where we're placing dirt in the first phase? Well, when we do that, it starts to result in isolating those units and putting them further off into the community, and it makes it hard to stage or phase that. So then we went back to the looking at a current plan, which is a balanced earthwork on the site. And as much as we can, we think that this is the better way to go and plan the phasing, minimize the tree disturbance, but balance the earthwork on the site. That kind of leads into the utility and infrastructure design that we're looking at. We started looking at this loop road, which is our construction access. And this kind of gives you an idea that when we're looking at stormwater and gas and electricity and sanitary sewer and how our stormwater is being placed onto the property, how does that impact the site, and where are the areas that we want to go ahead and get those in place in the final location as much as possible. And then we started looking at, the cut and fill balance. We're cutting out soil for the new independent living building and we're placing in the roadway system and taking out your existing roadway and utilities. Where does that earth go and how does that impact the trees that are in this location? So it kind of came back to a plan that we started looking at how the site would be storing stormwater, how the existing roadway system would be taken out, and how we start to place in the architecture, the first phase building and the hybrids, and then the assisted and common, and how those are all connecting, how we're storing stormwater, and then placing and staging the construction. So we have a staging area for the building for all this construction and where the earth from that first phase may go as a storage area for that. And then the dark green were the tree areas that we knew that we could protect. The light green tree areas are the areas that we want to protect. And we're going to spend some time as we start to move from SD to DD and CD to really save as many trees as possible and look at the grades relevant to the plan topography. And if we can save more of these trees, we will. So moving into the South Campus or the community south of your existing, this kind of gives you an idea of the master plan and a little bit more progression that we've made on it. We've got the new building, the new independent. We have our two hybrids. We have the assisted and commons building here. This is the Tooten Hall and Henry. And then the circle courtyard right now of trees that we're really wanting to minimize the impact to that area as much as possible. And then the maintenance building, the roadway, we're tucking that back into the woods a little bit along the edge so that we could have the greater access and storage and bus storage and make that accessible but not visible from the community. Now, getting into the existing community, really what we want to focus on is how do we integrate that? How do we make sure that what's in this location ties into the overall fabric of the community? And are there amenities and spaces and embellishments that we can make here? Now, the existing walkway system is kind of around the bottom of the site right here. And what we're thinking is we could go into the woods and hand stake and look at how maybe there's an opportunity to have more pathways. Maybe there's bird gardens or additional butterfly gardens or opportunities within that area. We're looking at an opportunity for the fitness area. Maybe that's a little more expanded. We take advantage of the grades in here, but we're going to really focus in on the trees that are in this area and make sure we're not disturbing that. Adjacent to that, we're thinking, well, maybe there's an opportunity to have a centralized dog park or something up here, or there may be smaller ones in this location. All of that's to be worked out in the future. You can see the connectors that are coming out of Henry and they're going across. So you're walking out of the lower floor of Henry. And at this point, you start to climb because this building is about 20 feet lower. So you're hitting this building at the second floor. You'd come down an elevator and you'd be at the main level. Crossover connector that's elevated. And then you would come into the dining second floor of this building, which allow you to come into an elevator and go down into the commons. This connector is back up at the main level that we came across on this connector, and it would enter into the basement level or the parking level of Tooten. So that kind of gives you an idea of how the buildings are working in this location. So this grade that's happening in this location, there's about 30 foot of fall from this location down, and we're having to excavate this platform a little bit to get these buildings to tuck into the site, just like we tucked the buildings in the first phase into the project and into the topography without impact to the tree canopy. And this is where we're looking at, there's an opportunity here with that grade change, the lower dining terrace out of this area to take advantage of those opportunities to have a cascading mountain type feel, like a waterfall that's cascading down and running down underneath of this lower level bridge connector. So as we start looking at those opportunities to have smaller and larger little areas for your pets to gather and socialize, this will be also a great area for you to socialize. We're also looking at the fitness equipment that you have on site, and we'll study that equipment. And if you like how that's working for you, there may be an opportunity to put in an equipment that may be different functions or different fitness and training. But we look at this as an opportunity as you start to plan, that there'll be programs and opportunities to, look at challenges within the community with your residents. And we'll look at that as maybe the different equipment that might monitor or track your progress. The water feature, we really want that to be something that looks like it's been there from day one. So these are some examples of water features that we've done throughout the United States, where we really took advantage of the topography, and we really took advantage of the materials and the planting materials to bring in something that it just has a nice calming effect. It's sound, and it really invites nature into the community, and an opportunity to enhance and embellish your community with a natural element that's throughout North Carolina. So moving down into the project a little bit further, so we were just here looking at the water feature, and this is where we're looking at our stormwater system. All the water and piping that's occurring at the upper level, we're going to take advantage of those areas, and maybe we can bring that on grade and make that like a little dry stream beds that are running through the property, down through the water feature and into this lower basin. And then this basin would store and harvest the rainwater, and that water would just circulate on down the hill all the way down to the lower stormwater management system. That's at the lower, there's a little existing lake or little pond, almost like a farm pond in the woods there. And we're going to see if we can maintain that as is as our stormwater management system. These are the hybrids. So you're coming in low, and you'd go into the elevator and you would come out at the upper level and on grade with these. So all the units that are in the hybrids would look out onto this amenity, and we would have trail systems throughout this area connecting up to the upper levels. On the independent, we're having this area is the parking deck, and you're entering into the lower level of the parking structure, and you could actually come out and walk out onto this property, onto this amenity side. So this area in here is going to be fairly level, and you could walk around this entire terrace level of the courtyard. And what we're hoping to have in that location would be, the fitness and outdoor Tai Chi yoga areas, outdoor events areas where we could have in the dining room where you could come out and open up the windows and the glazing and come out into this area, the pavilion, where you may have outdoor concerts or outdoor events where a musician would come in and set up a stage here, and they could set up chairs and have a concert in this location. Maybe there's fire pits for the neighborhood where you could come out of the from your community and come down and have, almost like the social hour, and you could walk around this area and engage and have, like the progressive dinners that I have in my community. Looking at in this area is where the fill dirt is, where we were looking at in the first phase. So we'd have some tree loss here, but we would go ahead and platform that out for the future. But in the meantime, we could actually make that a meadow and have wildflowers. Maybe someone wants to take up beekeeping or something and have, some wildflower honey here. So this could be the garden area, or this could be an area where we could have pickleball or other lawn activities. So all this is for us to plan with you and look at how this would be planned out, so you would have the walking trails and fitness areas throughout the community. And those activities, the lawn areas and the Tai Chi gardens, all of those areas are social spaces that we want to create for you. We want this to be exciting, but we also want it to be natural. We want it to feel as if it were there from the beginning of time, and the buildings that we're placing in have a historical element to them, and they're in context with the vernacular of your community, and they feel inviting. There's opportunities for resident garden areas throughout, and we want to plan those out with you and make sure that we're making that accessible, and regardless of whether you're on, walking or on a walker, or you need access, it's all going to be 5% or less. And we're going to make sure that we have planters that are high and low and that we can take in and tailor that for your use. But really, overall, this community is your community. And we want it to evolve and change with the residents that are moving in and with you for what you want and what you need within the community. We want to spend a little bit of time on the trail system. The Mountain to Sea Trail is right north of your property. We want to connect that back into the fabric of your community. There's already trails and walkway systems throughout your existing community. So we want to tie that down into the lower section. So as these trails and walkways depart from the concrete and the walkways in this location, we could work with you and look at what's out there in the woods and tie those back into the overall fabric of the community. So we would have an extensive trail system throughout the community, linking everything through. And we thought it might be fun to name those trails. Maybe there's an opportunity to make it like the Appalachian Trail so that you walked a certain section and you could have that competition throughout your community. At Still Hopes in Columbia, South Carolina, we actually had a walk in a preservation area of their community, and that the trail system was something that they actually had mile markers and they kept track of it. And the residents could actually report that they've walked from, Georgia to North Carolina or North Carolina to Seattle by the number of miles that they've walked throughout the trail system. And this could be much the same. Maybe the trail systems or the rabbit trail, the deer trail, or we name those and we put mile markers on them and really link it back to the trail system that is adjacent to your community. So we wanted to give you some ideas of what this looks like. I wouldn't please don't hold our feet to the fire here, but this is really a 3D modeling that we're starting to play with. We thought this might give you an idea of how it feels, and there's a human scale to this. We really want to spend time to make sure that we're looking at the relationships in the context of the containment, the space, and connectivity. I mean, these connections and walkways that are already in your community, we want to make sure that you can walk through, come down, and you can walk through this area. So we really want to spend some time on that and make sure that we're preserving everything that we have out on the site. We're enhancing and embellishing it, but we want it to feel like it's just part of the community. It's always been there from day one. These are some hand sketches that Dustin did in our office here, where he was trying to give you a feel for the views. If you're looking from the assisted living or the independent, you're looking over the waterway, over to the dining area and the AL in the background. This is a little aerial view of the hybrids. And you're looking down into the courtyard space and how that little feature might look. And we need to spend some time on that, really sizing it the right size. We really want to use the right materials in that location and to make it really feel natural and engaging. This is a view looking back from the independent to the connector that's coming across. So we'll have a lower level open connector and an upper level connector. And then this is a view from the little fire pit area looking over to the assisted living building. And that's the connector here. Looking down, kind of give you a feel for how that space would look. We really want to make sure that it has the scale that we're looking for here. This kind of gives you some of the context of what we're trying to create. We really want that mountain brook kind of feel, really planted nicely, and have the pedestrian pathway system along the water's edge or along the buildings, so it's inviting, safe, and engaging, and it makes it feel very strong, like a community that you're looking for. So that's all I have. Bob, if you want to take it from here, are these any questions that we might have?
Thank you, Jake. Yeah, let's just, anybody that has a question.
I have a question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Jim.
About the pond there. What's the water in the pond going to look like? Is it going to be clear? If it is, what's going to keep it that way? And my main question is, what's going to keep the geese away from the pond? And algae, mosquitoes. It seems like this is going to take a lot of water treatment that could be expensive. A major concern is the geese, based on what we see across Hendersonville Road from here. They're everywhere. They migrate around on sidewalks, deposit things on the sidewalks, and it could be a problem. And I'm just wondering what the plan is to either keep them away or get rid of them.
Let me give you, maybe I can help out on those questions. We've spent a lot of time on the actual design of these pond and water features throughout, different communities in the United States. And we really spent a lot of time on the type of fish and the population of the aquatics that you want in that pond. So in this pond, what we're looking at would be an aeration system. It would be a circulating water system. So we're actually bringing the water, storing it from the rain. There'll be a lower basin on the site. And that water would come up and go through we wouldn't use a media filter, but we would use a UV light system that would kill any bacteria or any algae that may be forming in the water. But what we've found, the more it's natural, the more fish and aquatics and the population, the more it becomes natural, and the more we don't treat it. There's no chemicals put in it. It will become stainable, and the fish and the aquatics that are in it, the plant materials will create bogs, all that. And the waterfall, as it's falling, it's aerating the water also. So the water should be pristine and clear. And from the standpoint of geese, what I've found and where we've had issues with it is where we've actually put in pond or water features where there's an extensive amount of lawn area around it. The geese will feed on that grass. And they tend, if the edge of the pond is accessible for the geese, so if the geese can go into the water and then just walk out onto the lawn areas, you're going to have geese. But they don't like to come to pond areas where it's difficult for the geese to move back and forth from the edge to the water. It's just not safe for them. So we're going to make it so that there's very little lawn area. We're going to try to use as much natural material along the shore of the pond to make sure that there's not an easy access for the geese. They can't walk in and out, and we're going to make it difficult for them. And that's been very successful for us in a lot of communities. It's where we have huge areas of lawn area. They tend to get out of the pond and they go and start migrating through the community. So that would be our intent, not to have that.
Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Where does the water come from? That's the runoff water off of okay. When we get a drought, where does the water come from?
Sure.
Well, I always like to drill a well, and it's a supplement well. And it's a well system, you know, that we can put in that would actually be for that situation. So as the lake leveling system, you can imagine you got a vault system underground, and then there's a line coming out, and there's a leveler on the pond. So as long as the rain's coming and there's storm water and natural water coming in, it'll hold it at that level. As soon as the level starts to drop down, it tells that well to kick on, and it'll start to pull well water up and level the lake out. There is a lot of evaporation and transmission of water that's happening, because if the waterfalls are cascading and the water is moving and the sun's on it, you're going to have evaporation that occurs. And if it's not being supplemented by rainwater enough coming off of the buildings and the site, then the well water would kick on and maintain that water elevation for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'd like to ask about the trees. You show a lot of trees in all the pictures, but how are you going to keep them in place while you're building? It's very hard to build with trees.
On the water.
My son had a job as cutting trees down in Swanee for many years. His favorite customers were the builders because they tried to build too close to trees, and then later my son went in and cut them down. So
Yeah. Now the key to preserving the trees is the hydrology. Like I said, we got to keep the water to them. We're going to study where those trees are that we can maintain that. There's a lot of earth movement on the site where the assisted living building and the independent building are being placed into the hillside there. We're having to drop that area. It's about 20 feet down, just to platform those buildings in onto the hillside. So that area will be, all the trees in that location will be taken down. And then we would come back in just like we did in the first phase of your community plan and put them back in place. And we're not going to replace the existing trees. We're going to put in new trees.
Easily.
So, thank you.
I have a concern. I don't know, am I on or not?
Yes.
Yep, you're on.
From the plans that I see, we live on Wakefield Drive right at the end. And we have a retention pond there. And it may be 20 feet deep. We're from southern Louisiana. And, you know, all of this area has bedrock very close to the surface, except that one area that's been dug out for a retention pond. And we're in New Orleans, where they have put fill into any area, compacted it as much as possible. You put something heavy on it and you're going to have subsidence and cracking of walls. And I'm very concerned about that and wondering why you would choose the one place on campus that does not have bedrock near the surface to place a large independent living building.
We spent a lot of, we're actually going to do more. We've done some geotech survey. We've done borings throughout the site. And you probably, when we were out there doing that, people were getting upset because we were starting to impact some trees and vegetation. But what we're trying to do is do exactly what you're asking. We're exploring the bedrock and the amount of how deep the stone was, if there is stone. We found very little stone underneath of the surface throughout the property. There is, in that location, when you get down to the basement level, we're starting to impact a little bit of stone, but not much. And that's like I was saying, you're going down 20 feet, 30 feet in that location. And that's where we start to hit it right at the bottom of that 30-foot boring. So what we'll do is we're going to do some more exploration once we get into the schematic design side of it. Take, very precise boring locations of where we're going to be digging down for elevator pits and cores and that kind of thing, and make sure that we understand the extent amount of rock that we're going to be impacting. But that's a really good question, because the last thing we want to do is go into an area to plan a building and you're blasting, or you're going in and doing a lot of rock removal. And that's not the case. That's what from the from the testing that we've done so far, that's not going to be the case on the site.
Well, sir, you do plan to build the large building right over that dugout area.
That's right. And it's right, if you look at the existing loop road as it's coming down the hill, it's sitting on top of that loop road. So we're actually, where the pond is currently there, the little stormwater pond and the loop drive, that is where the building is sitting on top of that. So all that'll, it'll go, all that road.
Is that what you want?
No.
Well.
Is he saying it's over the road or over?
Yeah, it's sitting on top of the road, and that road will be reworked.
So it will not be placed right over the retention area.
Not exactly. It's that retention area would be where the new road is coming up the hill. We're going to be bringing the new street through that pond up the hill, so that pond would have to be moved. And what we're doing is we're going to just collect that stormwater in the other basin in the core, instead of bringing the stormwater down through that side of the property. That makes sense?
Yes, we have invested interest in this because we will be the last house.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
when
we're
they
worried
turn it
about
over
you
there.
just looking down onto our patio too from 5 stories up.
Well, the way the loop road that we're putting in, what I was really trying to do is pull it as far away from you as possible so that I can screen and buffer that area and shift it closer to the new independent area. So because of where the road is coming up, we're not going to impact, the plan is we're not impacting your driveway or anything. That the road that's sitting in front of your house would be the road that stays. And we'll start from that point to put the new roadway in.
Thank you.
So we're gonna make sure that we put a lot of buffer and planting and everything along that edge,
Into this.
especially in that loop
I
drive.
don't know how you get into this exactly.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a statement if I can.
Sure.
My name is Lynn Brown and I'm chair of one of the resident committees here called Programs and Activities. And in the COVID era, we decided to do a survey to see what people were interested in terms of these next months here that we're facing in the winter, but also look ahead and see what people wanted. We surveyed and got a pretty good response. And from that survey, we've looked at the things that are most asked for. And one of them is bocce. Now, it showed a bocce playing on ground.
I lost you.
In Asheville and played bocce on the grass. It's a disaster. That's not the way to play it. You need it now with the help of Keith and Deborah, where we can put a bocce court.
Okay.
It's not simple. The one big area we have is off limit. So we are constrained with no space.
Okay.
The committee would like to ask you to look carefully for an adequate space for bocce with a legitimate court, gravel, sideboards, not grass.
Okay.
That can accommodate not just space for the court, but for the spectators who want to sit down and watch or the players who want to be around it. And that takes a significant amount of space. The meadow looks perfect, but if you refuse to use the meadow, then we have a problem.
No.
So please keep that in mind as you move forward. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. I love that. I think those are great opportunities. I guess we'll spend some time with you because if you're going to do competition play and you're going to bring people from the outside in, then that's a different size court or lawn area. So if you, I should say court because it's not lawn bowling. So we want to make sure we're sizing it the right size for you and the number of lanes that you want. So we'll just want to spend some time with you and I'll talk to Bob and make sure we get that committee together and talk about it.
I don't think we're looking for outside competition. I think it'd be more like the croquet court, which is a lovely, lovely facility here. And we'd
Okay.
like to do something like that, but I think we think of it as an internal activity.
Terrific. Okay. I love it. I think those are just great opportunities for socialization, and it brings people together, and I think I try to put them in every community that we design. And we're seeing a lot of pickleball too. So that's another activity that I see that's just really growing. And when I heard it for the first time was probably about 5 years ago, 6 years ago, when we were laying that out, and I had never heard of a pickleball court. Now they're everywhere.
Right, right.
Jake, a question, please. Is there a established timeline for what you've just shown us?
Get that.
There is, but I don't have that schedule in front of me. I would probably defer to Jim Hudgens on that, or Bob.
I can tell you, basically, and I preface everything with the start. If things go well, and we know we're in a very uncertain environment, but we are looking at possibly commencing with pre-marketing. Pre-marketing drives the whole project. And then you've got to do bond financing and all that, but we're looking at pre-marketing spring of next year, and that will go on for a few months. We're looking at possible construction commencing in late spring of 2022. And then you've got about 2 years of construction, give or take. So we're not looking for occupancy until 2024. But that's, and I say all of this, things need to go well. And so that's what we'll have, continuous communications with the community. But when things start to get, when you go to market, getting 10% deposits from those folks on the wait list, you've got an opportunity to retreat, but you really don't want to do that to those people, because they're going to start thinking about selling their homes and those types of things. But until you start the pre-marketing effort, you don't have a really firm time frame. We've got a time frame, but that pre-marketing is when things start to get more solid in your estimates of the future time frame.
Dave Gallantine's had his hand up for a while there. Dave, what do you got?
Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Jake. I'd like to just very, very briefly have you revisit the geese and help us understand how the geese and the meadow are going to work together.
Okay.
Or not, or hopefully not.
That's a good point. When you start having the meadow area and how they handle that, ideally we wouldn't mow it. We'd keep the grass as high as possible and let it be a true meadow, and then the geese won't go into that location at all. It's where we have the biggest problem, is where it's mowed. And if you go down the road from your community and you see that lake and it's got all that grass around it, I bet you it's just full of geese, because what they do is they go out and they graze. The geese go out of the pond and they graze. The pond is a safety area for them from the predators. So if they can just fly from the lawn right back into the lake, it's a perfect habitat for them. Where they don't like it is where there's not that free flow from grazing to the lake. So those are some good points that you're bringing up. And I would say that meadow area that we're planning would be,
All in the meadow.
it would be a tall grass, unmowed, kept very natural. And we would look for hydroseeding that with meadow plants.
Okay, so I think what I'm hearing is, while we're waiting for the meadow to grow up, the geese from up the road are going to fly over to the meadow here.
Oh, if that became an issue, and what we've done in other communities until the community gets stable and the plant material gets in, is they hire a local dog that goes out and just runs around. And they're trained to do that. They'll just run and they keep it so that the geese don't want to be there because the dogs are chasing them.
Super answer. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Aren't the geese edible?
For the dog.
We should have invited the dining committee.
Yeah.
Right.
Understand.
Jake, could I ask one follow-up question on the pond, if I could?
Sure.
Yeah, it's generated a lot of interest. Yeah, some nervousness, a lot of enthusiasm. The central pond, could you give me a feel about the dimensions of that thing? I'm having a little hard time visualizing about what it looks like in terms of dimensions there.
Well, I got my scale right here and I got the drawing on my table. So if you'll give me a second.
They're gonna have fish in this pond.
Yeah, he mentioned fish.
It's Bob Warnett. We've talked to multiple number of other CEOs and operations teams that THW has put their ponds in, and they are highlighted features of their community, and really not only from the aesthetic point of view, but the ability, especially when you have a circulation pattern to walk around the pond, and then you have benches around connected with the walkways, but people will, you know, whatever the distances around the pond may be a quarter of a mile, but it's an easy, very peaceful way for folks to get their exercise in. And you know, then you've got the connectivity with the outdoor pub area and other activities, whether it's bocce ball, pickleball. This is just it will complement what we've got in place. It doesn't replace anything. It just complements and really takes our opportunities. I think what we all know and love about Asheville is the opportunity to be outside and do more activities outside. And when you can get exercise and entertainment right here in the core of our community, we just think this is just a tremendous opportunity. But these CEOs said that we've talked to them quite a bit about the maintenance and upkeep and fear factors of all that. And they have assured us that, you know, THW really knows what they're doing, and there will be some complications, as with anything starting up, challenges, but they have overcome those in all the communities that we've talked to.
I'll confess, I'm one of those kind of enthusiastic about the water features. I think it's going to add a lot. For whatever it's worth, before we get back to Jake, I'll just tell you, I worked closely with a corporate client a few years ago that had an awful geese problem for exactly the reasons. They had lawns, that kind of stuff. One border collie, 1 week into the problem. It absolutely took care of it.
Yeah.
And Bob, in addition to talking about the water feature, having built these features into university campuses that I've been on, the water feature actually becomes the signature picture for your facility.
Right.
You know, because it's like a golf hole. It becomes the signature for your facility. And that's where all your pictures and your brochures and your marketing are happy people walking around that and distance pictures and so forth. So it'll be spectacular, I suspect.
That's definitely our goal. And to me, it brings I don't know, it's an energy about the water. And the fact that we're harvesting it and using it naturally and not containing it in a basin that is out in the woods somewhere, or it's not being, you know, it's just kind of like a stormwater basin for a Corps of Engineers kind of project versus something that's actually an amenity. There's a huge advantage to that. I love to see the energy and the residents out there. And I always walk around when I'm at our communities where there are ponds or lakes. And I ask them, what is it that brought you to this community? And they're like, this is it right here. This amenity that's in the core of this community is why we're here and not down the street at another community. They love it, and they love the calmness and the sound and the amenity that's created by the feature.
One more thing, if I might, please put a very efficient pump in. That sucker's gonna run 24 hours a day. You need the best pump you can buy.
Well, it's kind of like a swimming pool pump in your swimming pool. It's going to be running, 24 hours a day. But we want to make sure that we put it in efficiently. We're going to put it below ground, and we're going to make it so that you won't hear it, see it, but it's going to be, we're going to use 3-phase power on it because it's a more efficient pump system. And the energy it's consuming is less than a 2-phase or a single-phase pump system.
Okay, but there's 3-phase motors and pumps, and there are other 3-phase motors and pumps. Spend some time looking at what's the most efficient, uses the least amount of electricity, pretty please, and I'll shut up.
Absolutely. Well, I'll make sure whatever we design, we put it past your test, let you come look at it and see what we're doing.
So Jake,
That's going to be interesting. I'm sitting in a wheelchair. I'm not sure how I get to it, but that's all right.
No. I mean, we usually work with people like Otterbein or Roman Fountains. Roman Fountain is a vendor that we use, but they always design the pump systems. Now, those are the consultants' names. That's not the pump equipment that they're specifying.
Yeah.
But those are all very.
Jake,
Take
what
a
did
look
you
at
get
our
on your
facilities guy
quick
here.
research there?
Our facilities guy here is really good. Work with him, please.
Okay. Oh, absolutely.
Julie Johnson has her hand up.
Jake, did you get an answer to Bill Kluntz's question?
Not yet. On average, the pond's about 80 feet wide, and it's about 280 feet long. 280 by 80. As we've got it drawn right now. Now, when we get into the topo and the grading and the shelving and everything else, that may change.
I was just looking for order of magnitude. That's great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Julie.
Thank you. I have a question regarding trees. Obviously, you will have to remove a number. And from what I understand, Asheville now is going to require a 1-for-1 replacement, except under perhaps very rigid circumstances. We live in the new development area where the city dictated the types of trees that went in and the distance between trees. And in my case, I'm sitting on a lot in which the new trees are located maybe 15 feet from the house.
Okay.
I've looked up the growth pattern of all of them. All of them are supposed to get somewhere around 80 feet tall and 40 feet wide. So that's a lot more tree than the land it's sitting on. And they're 20 feet apart. They were spaced 20 feet apart. How do you all plan to deal with that requirement by the city when the city is picking out what trees you have to use? And some of them are pretty humongous.
I can tell you what we've done in the past, and I hope that we can do that here, because I hear exactly what you're saying, and I think that the ruling to have a tree every 20 feet on center or 25 feet on center and say that they all have to be oaks, let's say. Well, the problem with that in your community is I wouldn't specify an oak tree because it puts down nuts and it makes a hazard. It makes it a slipping hazard for people that are walking along the street or on the sidewalk. So I would be going back to them and saying, is there a way that I can take the full length, and this is what we've done in other communities, take the full length of the entire roadway system. Based on your code, you want a tree every 20 feet on center. Let's say that's 100 trees. I want to take 100 trees and I want to clump and and space those along the roadway, the full frontage that you're talking about. But I don't want to put them in 20 feet on center. I want to create a natural spacing and variety that makes it feel as natural as possible. And most often they'll allow us to do that. Now, you may get a very stern, horticulturalist who's working with them and that says, no, this is how we're going to do it. Then we would show them hardship and we'd say, you're making us put in a tree by nature is going to be 80 feet tall and 100 feet wide or whatever it is. And we think that's going to be a problem. Could we substitute that with a hedge maple or something in this situation here to allow us to do that? But my preference is to collect the number of trees that they want on the frontage and then put in a variety of trees so that we don't have one specific species of tree all the way down the street. I mean, that just makes it so difficult too. Let's say it gets a blight comes in and we have all maples and it kills all the maples. You've lost every tree on that street.
So Jake, this is Keith. The city of Asheville does give us a pretty extensive list. It's maybe 30 to 40 trees they allow us to pick from, but Julie's right. They do strict requirements of spacing and really didn't work with us too much, but we'll work through the city during our application processes and zoning processes to see, hey, what list of trees there are on there and what are the requirements for sure.
Yep.
Thank you.
Now, sometimes we'll do, they'll come in and they'll take in the total caliper inches that we've taken down and they put it into a formula. So if we took down 600 inches of trees, then they want us to put back 600 inches of trees. So if they're 2-inch caliper or 3-inch caliper tree, it's going to take quite a few trees at 3 inches to get to 600. So they usually have that equation that we need to go through and calculate the number of replacement trees that we're putting back. And that's the minimum. That's their standards of what we have to put back. We would hope that we would put in a variety of trees that, just like your existing campus, when we did that, we put in a variety of trees and put in flowering and seasonal plants that change with the seasons.
It looks like Gary Allen, do you have a question? Have your hand up?
Yeah, Matt.
You might have to turn the sound off.
Yeah, mute. Ruthie's got her iPad next to mine. Hold on a sec. I have a question about the parking area, apparent parking area below Henry Hall along the end of Wakefield. And I'm wondering, it looks like that's going to have to be a good deal of dirt removed and a retaining wall placed in there. And also, will there be a good screen to cut the view of that parking lot off from the residents across the street, which includes me?
Yeah. Well, we want to put in a buffer between the street and the parking area. So we're going to propose, a good area in that area. Maybe it's 15, 20 feet of buffer. But like you were saying, the road that's in front of your house is sloping up and then the parking area is running at 5%. Because we're putting that new independent living building in, it's going to allow us to come up higher for that parking area slightly. But the difference between the new road and the existing road and the new parking area is minimal. It's only like 3 feet of difference between it. Like you're saying, we're going to cut it into the hillside below the current independent Henry Hall right there. So the goal is to tuck it in. It's going to be lower than the existing building there, but not much higher than the existing street. So it'll be just tucked in that hillside and buffered and screened, like you're saying.
Right. I guess we'll lose that walkway that goes up to Henry from Wakefield at that point.
Well, I want to look at all the sidewalk systems that are in that location and see if we can't tie all this into one nice system that goes all the way up to the commons area, the community center. Right now, you're kind of cut off and you have to go back into the street to get up that hill. If there's a way that we could tie a sidewalk all the way up in the planning, I think that would be ideal for the residents to live along that street, be able to cross and walk up right into the commons area, the community center.
Okay. And one other thing, in discussing things with people, there are a lot of rumors that are floating around. And I know we're going to lose one independent living unit with this expansion, but with all the connectors and so forth, there are people saying, well, so-and-so is going to lose their apartment because they're running a connector through it and this sort of thing. How many resident units will have to be taken out of service to make these connectors?
Currently, none would be taken out. I mean, the way we've got it designed now, the walkways that are coming out of Henry and coming out of Tooten at the lower level, out of Tooten, you're coming out at the garage level per our current design. So there are no units there. You would just come in and you'd walk into the parking level over, and we're going to make a connection to the elevator there. At Henry, where you know how you come out of the lower level of Henry at that doorway, we would come on straight out with that connector and then turn to your right and go down the hill to the next building. So that's our intent. And we really want to study that because there's a elevation change in the buildings between the two. So we want to make that as level as possible with that connector. So we want to study how, is there a ramp in that section? You come out of the building, ramp down and go across. So there's a little bit of study that we need to do, but currently there are no units coming out of service, independent living units, to make those connectors work.
No, thank you. That'll be a good answer I can give to people that ask that question of me.
Oh, good.
Mr. Graves?
Question about parking. I suspect we're going to need a lot more employees to work in these new buildings. Is there a designated employee parking area somewhere?
Well, we're putting in, we've looked at all the parking on the site. We're actually putting in a parking structure up by the clubhouse, or excuse me, I always say the wrong word, commons area or community center. It's sitting in that lot. So there'll be a 2-story or 2-level parking structure sitting in that location, which allows us to double the amount of parking in that area. But throughout, down by the maintenance building, we're looking at employee parking down there for staff in that location. We're looking at that area for all the bus parking and all the storage of transportation equipment that's going to be on the site. That would be in the maintenance location or the grounds building.
Right now, down along that road is, on Racket Club Road, is a major employee parking area. And I believe from looking at your plot plan, that's going to go away.
Yes.
So where are employees going to park?
Well, I would think that
right now they're separated from visitors and residents.
Right. Well, we're putting more parking than we need over by the new AL building. And then you got the parking structure. And we're actually adding more parking over by the health center building location over on that side. So hopefully, and I know we've gone through all the numbers. I don't have them at the top of my head, but we've studied all the parking that's currently on site. And then we've looked at the program and what we're putting under the building. So all the new parking under the building and everything, plus the surface parking, there shouldn't be a new burden to the site at all. The amount of employees and the new employees coming on site, that we would have enough to park them.
Okay, and is there going to be a place for existing employees to park during construction when the current parking lot's torn up?
Great question. We haven't gotten that far. I know we've looked at that and talked about it. And Bob, I don't know if you want to speak to this, but I know that we've talked about shuttles and shuttling people and moving people on site by using transportation methods that allow us to do that. But I assure you, as we go through the staging and the phasing and how we're going to build it, we'll be studying that and making sure that the staff has adequate parking and transportation and shuttles to get them to and from the site.
There will be a lot of research, and I know Roger's assuming that they're involved with us in pre-construction services now, but whoever the contractor ends up being, they will be intensively involved with us. A lot of our construction vehicles parked off-site in our last big project. I would expect that will be the same. A lot of them parked across the street at Walmart. And so a lot of that's still to be determined, but we'll be doing a thorough evaluation, and we really want to minimize the inconvenience for our staff, but we also know with a big project like this, there'll likely be things that we have to do to accommodate things off of our campus, but we'll have to evaluate that and see.
Thank you.
Okay. All righty. But do we have anybody else that you see, Matt? Let's take one more question.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Duke right here.
Hello, sir.
We're down in the weeds, and that is great. That's important, and we should be here. But I'm thinking a little bit broader in terms of how we get the population, current members here, up to speed on what's going on without them getting too deep in the weeds with us. I'm thinking about maybe a model of some scale that can be put in the lobby in the community center, blocked out, not in great detail, but at least explaining where we are today and where we might want to be when this project is done. I'm not sure how much interest there is on the day-to-day part of residents.
I appreciate your comments, very well taken. We wanted to start sharing, you've seen today some three-dimensional looks at the new buildings, some artist renderings that are still rough, but a lot of these things can be made available once we get a relative level of confidence that this is going to happen. You don't want to put out things that are going to, that you know will likely change, but we really wanted to try this out with you on how things are looking, how things are integrating. There's still work to be done, but it's an evolutionary process. But you know, one maybe unintended circumstance with this pandemic that's happened is all of you are well up to speed with using Zoom, and it's actually working quite well for people to get more up the curve than you might by having just some of the resident meetings that people may or may not attend. And so we'll evaluate these meetings, and some of these, I even think we're recording this one, Matt, right?
Yes.
So we'll evaluate and see. I think there's this meeting, based on y'all's questions, based on y'all's engagement, I think we're making some good progress here. So we'll evaluate that, but your point's very well taken. And there's a lot we can do with imagery on this to help people understand how it's going to look.
Hey, Bob, Marilyn Phibbs has had a question, had a hand up for a while. I want to give her an opportunity to ask that.
Okay.
Ms. Phibbs?
Hi, thanks. It's not a question as much as a comment. For me, the top amenity on this campus is trees, and not just individual trees, but the woods. I think a lot of other people feel the very same way. I'm picturing all of your drawings have lots of green clumps to indicate trees. So I know a lot of those are going to be small trees that you plant. But I look at those areas and think about not only what has to be cut down for buildings, but also what will be cut down for all the equipment that must come in. And it hurts my heart. The whole campus is really going to have a very different look and feel as far as woods and green things go. If you gave me my choice between the woods and the water feature, I would choose the woods. I know that somehow doesn't make as great a display in the marketing brochures as the water feature will. But I just beg that you don't mow down our woods. And that's just why I moved here. From the first time I ever came to Deerfield and rode through, it was the green spaces and the woods. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's truly a balance of we're trying to preserve a lot of green space that's already here that people do appreciate, and we also do have to deal with, as we build these new buildings, the stormwater runoff and how we're going to treat that. And so it's not, I think that the way the team has looked at it, it's not either or. It's complementing and preserving what we can, and also enhancements with a new amenity. So, okay, is there anybody else, Matt, that you see on there?
I don't.
Okay, I really appreciate y'all's being on this morning. I'm kind of almost surprised that we were able to get through it, given that the eye of the storm went over us not too long ago, and here the sun's shining now. So, and THW, thank you, Jim and Jake, and you guys, Brian. Really appreciate it. And we will continue the dialogue and conversations.
Thanks,
Great.
everybody.
Y'all have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.